Welcome back. I'm Terry Gilberg on Timeline with Terry. I'm here with Nathan Lewis, the author of Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and How to Fix It. And yes, it is an easy read. You ought to pick it up. All right, on to, Nathan, some of the more current events that average Americans, they'll pick up the Wall Street Journal, they'll pick up the New York Times, they'll just watch the news, and they hear about. Okay, so President Biden has his Build Back Better. The passing of two sweeping spending bills, two phases, that poured money into the economy, gave Americans a lift after the pandemic, and I say to that, made a lot of lazy Americans, because if money's coming to your mailbox, why go out and get a job? And compromise much of Biden's domestic agenda was set to help bring down inflation. This was his whole MO. Of course, that hasn't happened. Now we have, not we, but we are involved with a war in Ukraine, U.S. oil production. Are we still buying oil from Russia? We don't have the Keystone Pipeline moving along because his first thing that he did coming into office was stop that. So we've got a fossil fuel issue. We've got fewer dollars chasing fewer goods, policies making sure that we have even fewer goods, people not entering the workforce. And he still seems to think, and if we're buying oil from Russia, he still seems to think that all of this will bring down inflation. And I listened to his press secretary. And there are reporters that don't challenge her. There's some that do. And when they do challenge her, I'm referring to Jen Psaki, she ebbs and flows and bobs and weaves. And we don't get straight answer. And it's hard to get an answer from President Biden. And it's hard to get an answer from his vice president. So to me, the vibe is they're floating on this idea that they got it all taken care of. Just when in doubt, blame it on the pandemic. Otherwise, let's just ride through this and we're good. What do you say to all of those things?
Those are a lot of topics. I think the argument that this spending would bring down inflation was that it would help relieve some of these supply chain blockages. And whether that is a valid argument or not, it hasn't worked. We've really had the most persistent problems of this sort, I think, even since World War II, and maybe even World War II was not a good example of that. This supply chain issues that we've had and the persistence of it and the worsening of it is really weird. For example, the CF Industries, which is a major U.S. fertilizer producer, largest producer of nitrogen fertilizers, just said that the rail company that moves their fertilizer from the factory to the farms won't carry their stuff. Mm-hmm. Why? I don't know. The railroad just gave them a note. We ain't carrying it. What's up with that? I mean, can't we pay you and you can carry it? So there's very funny things going on here. I think most of us are aware now that the whole Build Back Better agenda is related to the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, and also related to the United Nations Agenda 2030. They even put the date in there, a title for you. They want to get their Agenda 2030 done by 2030. That's what it means. And they're building back better. Well, before you build back, you got to wreck everything that's there already. That's kind of what it means. Mm-hmm. And so these are, in my opinion, very sinister movements, and I don't really, what is my advice to conservative-minded American these days? If you think they're sinister, they are. Is my opinion, very sinister. It looks like someone's wrecking not just the United States, but the United States and Europe and much of the developed world on purpose. They say what the purpose is. It's Agenda 2030. You can go download the whole booklet from the United Nations. And we should, at the very least, have a clear picture in our head of what the alternative is, basically a free enterprise economy.
Okay, so you mentioned sinister, and you mentioned Klaus Schwab, and for those that don't know, we'll get into him in just a second. You mentioned the World Economic Forum. All right, I tend to agree with you. I've listened to a lot out of the World Economic Forum. it seems to me, again, the vibe I get is that there's the power players that are globalists. They're super rich, they got super egos. I mean, they're really narcissists, and they've got the right way for everything. They're all into AI, artificial intelligence. They boast about chipping people up so that your whole resume would be in the center of your hand, or any kind of little computer that identifies you. They talk about moral and social issues as just out the window because there's no God, that man is going to evolve from this Homo sapien to transhumanism. There's all these different things that they talk about, but they insist this is the future. So again, the vibe that I get is that they're puppeteering everything. Why? Because it's the Davos, Switzerland crowd. And they know better. And they know better because they're more wealthy and they're more advanced and they're more progressive. And when President Trump was in office, when he visited, he tried to, say, no. America's first. I'm going to make America first. People are going to follow us. If America falls, the whole world's going to fall. And all this futuristic stuff where you're in control is not going to work. People will rebel. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not going to have it as long as I'm president. Okay, he's not president anymore. At least not right now.
I
President
voted
Biden
for
is. What's that?
I voted for Trump.
Okay.
I'm sure I'm not the only one.
And no, you're not the only one. Certainly not with our listening crowd. But he's not the president currently, Nathan. And so here we've got Biden, and it seems like Biden is puppeteered by all of them. I don't know who whispers in Biden's ear or his other ear, or even if he needs hearing aids, because I think, and I'm going to say this politely, I think he's cognitively challenged at this point. But it's clear also that he is puppeteered. He does what he's told. And so I'm with you. We have this World Economic Forum where the power players, mostly from Europe, and also, the presidents who are on the left, go and they kind of powwow, and this is the way it's going to be. It's the drumbeat to Marxism and communism. They're pretty open about it, and you will own nothing, and you'll be happy. That's one of their bumper stickers, And so why are we fretting? Who cares? We will be happy, Nathan. What do you say to all of that? Is that just outer space stuff? Is it real? Should we be super afraid, or should we say, hey, this is the answer? Build back better means we don't have to build it at all. And I'll be happy. I don't have to get a job. Somebody's got to be at the head of communism, and it's going to be the Klaus Schwabs and the Bill Gates types and the Biden, if he can last that long, types, and we'll be happy.
Yes, it's we're not going back to Soviet communism of 1925. That was kind of communism 1.0, and one of the problems was that people weren't happy, right?
No kidding.
It fell apart. But now, it's if they can put chips in your head. Maybe they can, and all these other things, they can give you a monthly check and many of these other things. Maybe you'll be happier that way. Maybe you'll be more willing to live under their totalitarian system, which is essentially what it is. They dress it up, well, just as communism 1.0 was dressed up in the feel-good issues of that day, which was democracy, because mostly monarchies at the time, and leveling of incomes and so forth. The communism 2.0 is dressed up in the feel-good topics of our day, which is the environment and these kind of things, and diversity and that sort of thing. But that it really is what it is. And unfortunately, it is a tricky problem for conservatives to solve, but I encourage them to take it seriously. And it's true. If the United States goes down, who's going to resist? Is it going to be Germany, Australia, Japan? Who? China? No, right? It's not going to work. So,
do you fear what's coming out of the World Economic Forum? Do you fear the rhetoric? Or do you just brush it off and saying they're wackos? That's never going to happen.
No, I take it pretty seriously. And if you do take it seriously, if you listen to what they're saying, saying that they basically want to destroy everything so they can rebuild it in their vision, right? Order out of chaos is what it's called. And so that's another thing. We say the next round there might be some serious money printing or whatever you have. So maybe these economic policies that are destructive will be sort of on purpose. Vladimir Lenin was a great fan of hyperinflation. And in fact, the first thing he did when he seized power in Russia was he hyperinflated the currency. They had hyperinflation in 1917 to 1921 because it just blew away the old order. It just wiped them out, wiped out the middle class. They were all just kind of, getting from meal to meal. And it's very hard. There's nothing left to lose. So why resist in a sense, right? So as we see some of these economic policies coming down the pike, they are very sinister, in my opinion.
Do you put the COVID crisis from the last 2 years in that mix, almost like it was prearranged? There are many people, and I know I'm a little off of the economics for the moment, but it goes to who's controlling everything. Do you put the COVID situation that we've experienced for the last 2 years and the push for vaccines and Bill Gates being such a prominent member with Klaus Schwab, those two seem to be in bed together a lot with their ideas, as part of this, I guess, a tangent that comes into all of these things they're trying to do. What are the things? Well, COVID, get everybody vaccinated. If you don't die from coronavirus, maybe you'll die from the vaccine. And maybe this is a way to cull the herd. I mean, he's even said, we need fewer people. Bringing global warming as the existential crisis. I don't believe it is. I don't believe global warming is the existential crisis. I think they're the existential crisis. But they line up these progressive ideas, these woke ideas, in a way to frighten us all, I think, and then bring all these elements of life, whatever the agenda they're pushing, under one umbrella, and it's their umbrella. So how does COVID fit in with all of that? And by that I mean we've got supply chain problems, we got unemployment, we got money that came so that people would sit home and eat bonbons and not get a job. We've got people that are still masked and afraid, even though you don't have to wear one with TSA anymore. When 99% of all people that get it survive, and yet we bite our nails and worry about tomorrow, really? They've done a pretty good job of frightening people. And they've done a pretty good job of frightening people with global warming, and there are other things in their agenda. How does COVID, in your mind, fit into it, vis-a-vis your economic mind and where we're at right now as a result of being locked down for 2 years?
Well, I think you're right. If you just look at COVID as a political exercise, all these restrictions we had, all these changes to our economy, all the small businesses that were put out of business because vaccine restrictions or whatever. Did Congress vote on that? Was there a bill? I don't remember anything. Not
no.
Really.
There's
right?
an Emergency Powers Act that still hasn't been lifted.
Yeah, and all the and the various justifications. It's definitely a major erosion of our political process into basically authoritarian, tyrannical state. And another thing is, of course, as we discovered, COVID itself was kind of harmless. Not really that many people suffered from it. Some people think the vaccine itself is far more deadly.
Egregious.
I tend to agree with that. So yes, we have. It's in a sense a step toward a more communistic system where businesses are just told to do things. Mm-hmm. It's not quite state-owned industry, but this idea that everything's just going to be controlled from Biden's teleprompter, because we know that he just reads the thing, right? probably doesn't even understand the words. Biden's teleprompter is just telling, Big Brother is telling us all what to do now. It's a dangerous situation.
Well, it seems to fit into this globalist agenda that the Learjet Club that goes to Davos seems to have. We're running out of time, but I have to get to this. All right, so we'll go a little over if you don't mind. I want to talk a little bit about when President Trump was in office and he put tariffs on roughly 350 billion of Chinese-made goods. And despite the change in the administration, some of those duties still remain in place. Biden could lift those tariffs imposed by former President Trump. He hasn't yet, but he could. Can you respond to some of that? Was that a good idea with President Trump? And had he had a second term back to back, he may run again. We all know that he may or may not. We don't know if he will. But was that a good thing to do? And do you think, now that COVID appears to be in the rearview mirror, in spite of people still being masked and running around biting their nails, that the Chinese factories will start churning up again and will, just like a rubber band, just go right back, and American manufacturing won't come to America? We'll just go back to the way it was.
The situation now is definitely seems to be changing. China itself seems to not want to trade as much with the United States. We are, basically as a result of the activities in Ukraine, which were kind of like COVID, a rather minor event. Ukraine used to be part of Russia for hundreds of years. It's like the United States taking over Texas, if it had separated somehow. Became this global issue, which kind of split the world in half between the Russia, China, BRICS, Southern South axis, and the United States. So where everyone's kind of scratching their head about that, like, I didn't really see that one coming. But related to that, tariffs are an interesting issue. We've had a free trade policy for a long time, kind of arising from the Great Depression because of the Smoot-Hawley tariff and things of that sort. And its benefit for Americans has been debatable. And if you like buying cheap stuff at Walmart, it's great. If you want to have a nice, good paying factory job, it's not so hot. And drawing a line under all that, I think that we are going to have to ideally come to some understanding of that. What is really a good policy for Americans, not just the top of Americans who make good money at working at Google and then buy stuff at Walmart or Target, but the lower, the other half of Americans, and even the 20 or 30% least advantaged Americans. How do they get good, solid, good paying jobs? Right. And it's pretty tough when you have to compete with billions of poor people all around the world. I think there's progress to be made there. I personally have moved a little away from a free trade stance toward what you might call more nationalistic economics, and trying to put it into a more theoretical framework. Like, what are we really arguing here? Why is this a good thing? And that might be part of what we do going forward. What is really going to be good for America? I don't think that having open immigration is good for Americans. How does that benefit Americans? I can see how it benefits Hondurans.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really see how it benefits America.
We're running out of time. I hate to cut you off, Nathan, but if you would give final thoughts on your terrific book, again, Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and How to Fix It. I hope we covered a lot of the points in there, even if we were like a stone skipping over the pond there. Final thoughts before we have to say goodbye.
Inflation of the monetary type is real simple to understand. It's just the value of your currency going down. And this has been a chronic condition. It's not all the time, but it keeps happening since we left the gold standard in 1971. Plainly, the political system is incapable of any other course of action. The solution, in the end, there's only two solutions. There's the gold standard or the PhD standard. You either put your faith in gold, which has always worked for hundreds of years, not just for the U.S., but all around the world, or you put your faith in a bunch of guys with PhDs arguing about economic statistics, and that has never worked. Never
And they
worked
fly
anywhere.
to Davos,
And
don't
they
you
fly
know?
to Davos, so they might not even have your best interests in mind. Think about that.
Well, no, I don't think they do, because they want you to have nothing and be happy. And Nathan, you're delightful to talk to, and I'll have you back if you want to come back on the program down the road.
I'd love to.
Okay, that's great. Again, Nathan Lewis, co-author of Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, How to Fix It. Get his book. It's an easy read. It moves really fast. Nice to have you on the program. Please come back. We'll be in touch. My people will call your people. How about that? I'll call you and invite you back. Thank you. This is Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilbert. See you tomorrow for another Timeline topic.